All right, let's get started then. So we're going to start by talking about the last graph a little bit. There's a lot of issues with this one. I'll admit it was not easy. Just to clarify a few things conceptually. First of all, in terms of the percentages and the numbers and how these things add up, I think only a few people clued into this, so it's maybe excessively complicated for no reason. So this 13.2% of households, that's for the total population, right? But then these percentages are out of those groups. So out of all married couples, 12% would be impoverished. Out of all single parents, 32% would be impoverished. You'll notice that these percentages add up to 100%. And so what does that 100% represent? That represents the total number of impoverished households. So that's 100% of impoverished households. And then the numbers at the top, they all add up to 1.754 million households. Okay. So this was true of quite a few people that I left this comment that you're missing the number of households in each group. So if IELTS gives you information for one of these graphs, you can't neglect information that IELTS provides. So if you don't include this information, you might get a band 5 on task achievement. If you only give the percentages, for example. Okay, so it's really important to include everything that IELTS gives you. If you don't, you get killed on task achievement. I want to start by showing a very good example. And I'll get the author to read this one. Sylvia, can you read your work? It was really good.
The whole thing?
Yeah.
The bar chart presented by Australian Council of Social Research depicts the percentage of various Indigenous demographic segments residing in Australia in 2011. Generally speaking, it can be clearly seen that the group suffering the most was single parents, which accounted for the largest number of households in poverty, followed by the singles with no children. In contrast, elderly couples made up the smallest share of all poor families.
Okay, so let's look at the intro. So she's included all the information in the first sentence. So she's paraphrased the prompt. She's included who the author of the study is. She's included the year. And let's see what her general overview tells us about the organization of her writing. Okay, so she's mentioning the most impoverished group, single parents. Okay, and she's mentioning the second highest group, singles with no children. In contrast, elderly couples made up the smallest share of all poor families. So we can expect that her body paragraphs will be organized in the same way. Okay. Go ahead.
To start with, impoverished Australian residents comprise 13.2% of the total population, which represented 1,754 households.
No, so you'll read this as this is 1.754 million.
Yeah, million. Households in that country. Above all, the most indigent were single parents, which constituted 32% of all households in poverty.
See, and if you're stuck about how to integrate the numbers into your sentence, this is a quick and dirty way to do so. I'm not a huge fan of doing this throughout the whole piece of writing. Like, these numbers should be better integrated into the sentences, but at least she's included them And overall, there are very few grammatical mistakes, so this is good enough. Okay, go ahead.
Similarly, at 26%, singles who did not have children were the second most deprived demographic segment. Indeed, both of these groups together accounted for over 50% of all poor families in Australia.
Okay, so this is a phrase that everyone should be using, demographic segment. A lot of people struggled to find a phrase that can encompass both individuals and groups. So I wrote here, she had individuals written down, and it's true. Singles who did not have children. Obviously, if you're single, you don't have kids, you're not really a family, you're a single person. But when you're comparing singles to couples or singles with kids, what single word or phrase captures both of those things? So demographic segment works. And only a couple people picked up on this. So this is the kind of comparison that IELTS expects you to make, noticing these kinds of things. Both of these groups together accounted for over 50% of all poor families in Australia. So what is she talking about? She's talking about singles who don't have children and single parents. So single parents, 32%, and singles with no children. So together, 58% of all impoverished households. So you can't say individuals because individuals doesn't include single parent. You can't say families because families doesn't include single with no children. So demographic segment or demographic groups works really good in this kind of situation. Works really well, rather. Okay. Sorry, go ahead.
On the other hand, elderly couples made up just 8% of the total impoverished households, which was the least suffering segment of the population, followed by couples without children at 10%. Further, married couples with children, just as elderly singles, accounted for 12% of all Australians living in poverty.
Okay, very nicely done. Any questions about this one? This kind of writing is what you're all aiming for. This is the level that you all need to attain. Okay, so it's a really good model for you to aim for. Now, another common issue was not incorporating the names of the demographic segments in your writing. So when you see these little titles here, elderly, couple, elderly, single, married couple with children, these don't necessarily work that well when you incorporate them in sentences. So you got to figure out a way to put them into sentences. So here's one pattern that works. If you say category or group, you need to put the. So if you want to put those phrases from those categories directly in, then you need to say followed by the single with no children category or group, or followed by singles with no children. Because if you're talking about multiple people, it's not good to say couple with no children. You need to say couples with no children, singles with no children, elderly couples, elderly singles, single parents, couples with no children, married couples with children. So basically you need to put S at the end of parents or at the end of couples and get rid of the commas. So let's just look at Allah's for this one. Allah, are you there?
Yes. How are you doing, sir?
Excellent. How are you? So let's look for opportunities to clean this up a little bit. Okay. And just in terms of the grammar mistakes, these aren't really grammar mistakes. They're grammar mistakes in this context. Because the graph is showing you 2011 data, the whole thing needs to be in past tense.
Yeah, I saw that.
Okay, go ahead, sir.
Okay. So the bar graph illustrates the percentage of different demographic segments and poverty poverty in Australia in 2011.
So this construction is actually quite a bit simpler than the one that you were using. Right.
Okay. Generally speaking, it can be clearly seen that single parents comprised.
Comprised.
Comprised
Compromise means make an agreement. Comprised.
comprised the highest percentage of households in poverty, followed by the single with no children category, while the lowest percentage were seen in the elderly, single, and couple with no children family categories.
Good. So that's what you've been doing. Single with no children category, elderly single, and couple with no children family categories. So if you keep doing this repeatedly, it sounds awkward. It's better to just talk about the names of these categories themselves. So instead of saying followed by the single with no children category, we can leave that one, while the lowest percentages were seen in the elderly, single, and couple with no children family categories. So how could we revise this? The lowest percentages were seen. What's the preposition that you need to use? While the lowest percentages were seen.
Among
Mm-hmm.
elderly, singles, and couples.
Yes. Simpler, right?
Yes.
All right, keep going.
Okay. In terms of single parents and single with no children categories, the largest percentage of households living in poverty in Australia was seen in the single parents group at 32%, which accounted for 317,000 families, followed by single with no children group at 26% of households residing in poverty, which comprised 500,000 singles, which was the largest segment of those living in poverty in 2011.
Good. Here's an opportunity to make a change. You've got which comprised 500,000 singles, which was the largest segment of those living in poverty. So we haven't talked about this in a few weeks, but when you've got multiple relative clauses, so relative clauses are clauses that start with which, who, that, whom, sometimes when, sometimes where, but usually which, who, that. What kind of easy change can you make to a relative clause to transform it into another structure? Ala, we talked about this several weeks ago, over a few weeks. What's that other structure that's really easy to transform relative or subordinate clauses into?
Into passive participle.
Yeah, it's called participial phrase. Good.
Oh.
If you don't know what this means, it's really important that you check out this section of the complex sentences curriculum in the bottom section of the course. If you need help finding it, we can talk about that later. But if you look at the bottom section of the course, underneath all the theme units, there's a huge grammar section. So the first few units start with the prefix G. G stands for grammar, and that's your basic verb tenses, passive voice, active voice. stuff like that. But then underneath that, you start seeing sections starting with CS, stands for complex sentences. Look for the one that's called participial phrases and go through all of those. This is really common in English grammar, and it's actually a super easy way to add a lot of variety to your sentence constructions. The grammar is actually quite simple. So where you have a situation like which comprised. See, let me just take this sentence out so it's a little bit clearer. This whole thing one sentence? Wait a second. Yeah, this whole paragraph is one sentence. That's a monster. Dude, that's an amazing sentence. Okay, this is really, really good. But when you've got which comprised, which was, this is really good. But to introduce some variety, we want to change, let's say, this one to a participial phrase. How would you do it?
Which comprised
Yeah, how would you
500,000 singles?
Yeah, how would you change which comprised 500,000 singles into a participial phrase?
I'm not sure. Comprising. Okay.
That's all it is. As long as this verb is in active voice, the tense doesn't make any difference. If this is present, past, future, any tense at all, it makes no difference as long as it's an active voice. It simply becomes comprising.
So like after a poverty, comma, then comprising 500,000 singles?
Yep. And then continue, comma, which was the largest segment of those living in poverty in 2011.
Okay.
Don't do this with be verbs.
With what?
Don't do this with be verbs. This can be a little bit tricky and inappropriate in some places, like here, which was. Don't change this to being. Okay, just use this with ordinary verbs. Which comprised becomes comprising. Which included becomes including.
Including, yeah.
Yeah. Super simple transformation. Okay, go ahead, sir.
Okay, with respect to the married couple with children and elderly single groups, the elderly single group, which included 228,000 person, and married couple with children group, which included
Same thing.
300 included 325,000 families shared the same percentage of households living in poverty at 12% in 2011. Is this here living? It's participle phrase, like including living. This.
Yes, good noticing, because this is short for that we're living.
Yeah.
See, this that we're living is the relative clause version of this. You get rid of that, and you get rid of the auxiliary, and it's living. This is a very good example of that. And here again, you've got with respect to the groups. Instead, you could do with respect to married couples with children and elderly singles. Elderly singles, right? You could go on like that. Okay, then the last part.
With respect to the elderly couples and couples with no children categories, the lowest percentage of households in poverty was seen in elderly couples at 8%, which accounted for 152,000 families of total Australian population living in poverty in 2011, followed by couples with no children at 10%, which included 232,000 couples.
Good. This is fantastic writing. I usually urge people not to write sentences that are this long, but this is really long, and except for this, like these minor verb tense issues, it's perfect. Right?
I have a question.
Yep.
Here in the last sentence, we can't say which including 300, or we can't say.
No, never.
No, right?
Never.
Yeah. Okay.
So if you're changing it to a participial phrase, it doesn't include which. And part of the explanation is the name itself. You've got a relative clause, and it becomes a participial phrase. So why is one called a clause and the other one is called a phrase? Can anyone explain that to me? Why is, let's say here, why is this one called a clause, but this one is called a phrase?
Because I think a clause has a verb, subject, and object. Clause.
Well, it's a little bit simpler than that, but a clause has a subject and a verb.
Yeah.
Right? So here's your subject. These things, which, who, that, these are called relative pronouns. Pronouns are like he, she, it, we, they, I. Relative clauses also begin with a pronoun. Which is for things, who is for people, that is for both. And here's your verb. But this one, a phrase, we call it a phrase because it's got no subject and it's got no verb. Comprising is not a verb. How do you know it's not a verb?
ING.
Yeah. So ing verbs always have what in front of them?
Verb to be.
Yeah, they have auxiliaries or helper verbs. Right? I am talking, you are talking, she was talking, he will be talking. So participles don't have any auxiliary, they're not verbs. And there's no which, so there's no subject in front of it. So we can't call it a clause, we got to call it a phrase, and a phrase just means more than one word. Here, let's look at this last paragraph he did. With respect to the elderly couples and couples with no children categories, which he could have changed to, with respect to elderly couples and couples with no children, the lowest percentage of households in poverty was seen in elderly couples at 8%, which accounted for 152,000 families, followed by couples with no children at 10%, which included 232,000 couples. This one too, Allah, this is a participial phrase too, but it's passive. Oops. This was originally which was followed by. If you've got a passive verb, does everyone see that this is passive voice? Does anyone have any questions when I say passive voice, active voice? Is that crystal clear for everyone?
Yes.
Okay. So if you've got a passive voice verb after which, this is a relative clause, it's even easier than the previous transformation. You just get rid of which was. And it's the third version, the third form of the verb. Follow, followed, followed. Again, review the participial phrases. it's a really easy way to add a huge amount of variety to your writing very, very quickly. So if he wanted to change some of these up, instead of saying which accounts for, what could he change this to?
Which account for? Accounting for. Accounting.
Good. And here, which includes, or which included, would simply be,
Including 300.
that's it. Easy, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Any questions about that last one that we did?
Sir, I have not gone through this participle clause, so I think I will read it and then we'll ask you if I have a problem.
Yeah, and there are some exercises there too. So it's not a participial clause. You can't call it a clause, you have to call it a phrase because there's no subject or verb in it.
Okay.
Does everyone know what a participle is? This is participial phrase, that's the adjective form, but what is a participle? Just FYI. It's a passive or active adjective. So everyone knows about passive and active verbs. Well, we have adjectives that are also passive and active. So we'll say like the amazing performer or the amazed audience. So amazing is an active participle. This is an adjective. And the amazed audience, this is also an adjective, but it's a passive adjective. Not every adjective has a passive and active version. Like if you say, I have a big dog, there's no active and passive version of big. But adjectives that are based on verbs, for example, have an active and a passive very often. Okay, any other questions about this particular graph before we move on? Okay, let's continue. So before we get to today's, I just want to have a quick look at this graph from Statista and just talk about some of the mathematics here. Okay, so we're not going to do this one. I just want to talk about the math. Americans lost hundreds of millions to online scams in 2014. And then it says financial losses suffered by victims of internet crimes as reported to the FBI in 2014. So the blue bars are male, the reddish bar is female, and let's say confidence fraud, romance scam. Men lost 15.4 million, women lost 71.3 million. So to have a properly developed topic, you need to include relative changes because otherwise it's too basic. You have to have some kind of comparison. You can't just say it changed from 15.4 to 71.3 million. Yep, we can see that. So you have to add a little bit of value. So here, you can describe it as males suffered losses of 15.4 million while women lost 71.3 million. Now, the question is, what's the ratio between these? How much did men lose compared to women in romance scams?
Difference is 56.
Quantify.
Yeah, so 56 doesn't tell you that much, right? Yeah, so you can subtract them, but again, 56 million, we don't know really what that number means in a comparison situation. Who said 25?
I said 1 to 5.
1 to 5. Good. So we can say men lost roughly 1/5 as much money as women in confidence and romance scams. This is the kind of language, this is like the percentage difference. So you can say 20% as much money, or you can say 1/5 as much money. And now if we look at it from the other point of view, women lost roughly how much as much money as men in confidence and romance scams?
Like women lost roughly 5 times as much as men.
That's it.
I didn't get it.
Well, you're comparing, so if you just subtract these numbers, do basic arithmetic, you're going to get this difference. But that difference doesn't necessarily mean anything. You want to give the ratio. It's ratios and percentages that most people use for making comparisons. So if men lost 15 million and women lost about 70 million, that's a little bit less than 5 times as much. Does that make sense so far?
Yeah.
Because 15 times 5 is how much?
75.
75. So we're not worried about precise math. IELTS knows you don't have a calculator, you don't have time to do precise math, pencil and paper, so round and use words like roughly, approximately, nearly, slightly more than. So you look at this number, it's 15. You look at this number, 70. So roughly speaking, men lost 1/5 as much money as women. Women lost 5 times as much money as men. Does that make sense?
5 times money, how?
Sorry?
How 5 times money?
You see this big bar here that says 71.3?
Yeah, but the women, the men's are getting that 5 times.
No, men is this blue bar.
Oh,
So for this, we're just looking at the first one. For the
okay.
For the confidence, fraud, and romance scams, men lost 15.4, women lost 71.3 million. So the ratio between these is approximately 5 times.
Yes.
So that's the meaningful comparison that you need to make. If you're talking about auto fraud, okay, let's go to this one. What would be the difference between these two?
50%. 0.5.
Yep.
Roughly 50%.
Yeah, roughly 50%. How about real estate fraud?
Almost the same.
See, this is quick and dirty math. So let's round. We're not going to follow the usual rules of rounding at school. We're going to call this one 8 million, and we're going to call this one 12. What's the ratio of 8 to 12?
3 to 4.
3 to 4. So women lost 3/4 as much to real estate fraud as men. Or more precisely, women lost approximately 3/4 as much to real estate fraud as men. That's
How you calculate?
Sorry?
How you calculate?
Well, I'm rounding. This is quick and dirty math, right? So we're not doing math class here, but I'm just going to call this one 12, and I'm going to call this one 8.
So it's 2 to 3, not like 3 to 4, I think.
So 12 over 8 What's the lowest common denominator here?
4.
So 12 divided by 4 is
8.
3 over 2.
Yeah, 3 of 2.
Right? Sorry, so women lost 2/3 as much as men, right?
In the exam, it's okay to say like that and you don't mention the numbers?
Sorry, is it okay to?
Like, this is only when we make a comparison, like comparison between two things, or like we cannot just like say it in the, let's say, first body paragraph without saying the numbers, like 71 or 15.
In your body pair, okay, in the introduction, avoid numbers. You just want to give a general overview that talks about the broad patterns without talking about the numbers whenever possible. Then in the body paragraphs, you would start by talking about the raw differences. You would use the numbers that are in this graph. You'd say men lost 11.4 million to real estate fraud, while women lost 8.4 million. But then you want to talk about the difference. Right? Women lost 2/3 the amount that men lost. That's a meaningful comparison.
Like in the end of the body paragraph.
Yeah, or even in the same sentence.
Okay.
How about
like
these?
we choose the easier, right, in the paragraph, not like in different one, but we choose like the most first one where it's easy to make the comparison.
It's always easy. If you use rounding and you say approximately or roughly, they're all easy. It's always going to be something like 2/3, 3/4, half, twice as much, 3 times as much, 3.5 times as much. It's never going to be something weird like 1.27 times as much. You can always say roughly a quarter, a half, 2/3, 3/4, twice as much, 3.5 times as much.
Yeah, I mean like the obvious one, like the important one we choose, right? Like the
Yeah.
noticeable one.
Yeah.
Okay.
But something like this, 7.6 to 8.7. So if you round, it'd be 8, 9. Those are pretty close together. So I probably wouldn't do it for intimidation / extortion scams.
Okay.
You need to do some of that. Otherwise, you're just mechanically repeating the information, which they don't want to see. It's in the rubric. That if you're just mechanically repeating the information, you get a low score. And I mean, that makes sense because if you, like this is not a weird writing assignment. This is standard writing for any kind of, for millions of business situations and basically any kind of academic paper, because you always have to support your ideas with data, with research. So that's why they've chosen this as the writing task, because you can't get through university, you can't succeed in business if you don't know how to make comparisons between numbers. It's impossible. So people make these kinds of graphs because this kind of information is really tedious to write about in sentences. This is the reason why we use tables and graphs. because it's just easier to understand this kind of information. So your description has to add a little bit of value. If you're just describing it word for word from left to right, nobody in their right mind wants to read that. Everyone would prefer to just look at the graph. So your explanation has to add something to it. It has to focus on some kind of meaningful comparison. That's why they always tell you, make comparisons where relevant in the prompt. It always says, summarize the information by selecting and reporting the main features and make comparisons where relevant. That's not an option, it's in the instructions. You have to do it. If you don't do it, you get a low score. It's not because they don't like you, it's just because you're not doing it. All right, let's move on to today's prompt. This one, I think, is substantially easier than the last one we did. Oops, why does that happen? Okay. So take a moment to familiarize yourself with the graph and let me know if you have any questions.
So this is the money on x-axis?
Tell
No,
me
y-axis.
what you think it means, because you're not going to get any more information on you're not going to get any information from this than what you see there. So tell me what you think it means.
Ages are given there, like 18 to 25, 26 to 35, 36 to 50.
Yep, so that's the x-axis.
Yeah, this is x. And the y-axis, it has to be money, maybe in millions or in pounds.
Percentage.
It's percentage.
Yeah, it's right in the title.
Yeah, percentage. Percentage of how much money? That's what I'm asking.
Nope.
No, it's 16%.
It's right in that. It's right in the title.
The child
People given charity.
British people giving money to charity. This is a percentage of a British people, but not the money.
We have no idea how much money they gave.
Yeah, this is because this is a percentage of the British people.
In each category. So if you look at 18 to 25-year-olds in 1990, what percentage of 18 to 25-year-olds gave money to charity? 1990.
More than 16%?
Yeah.
Roughly 16.
16, 17%, sure.
Yeah.
What about in 2010?
5 to 6%.
6%. That's all it means. We have no idea how much money they gave. It's not given. Okay, so far so good. Now you need to figure out how you're going to describe this. There's a pretty obvious pattern.
By the years.
Yes, I would definitely go by years. Body paragraph 1, 1990, body paragraph 2, 2010. So just generally speaking, what is the pattern for 1990? What happened?
It rose. It increased the percentage of money in 1990 because the red bar is getting, it's increasing.
And then?
And then, and then in
hang on. We're not done.
No, it's not.
It went up, and then?
Decreased.
And then it went down.
Yeah.
So it went up until people got to 50, and then with the older groups, 51 to 65 and 65 plus, it decreased with age, above age 50. What about in 2010? What was a little bit different?
It increased till 65 age and means at 51 to 65.
So there's a huge increase. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, but what else do you notice that's different about 2010? So yes, we have that shift. 1990, it goes up for the first 3 categories and then falls for the last 2. 2010 goes up for the first 4 categories, drops for the last one. But what about the amounts? Did people donate less or more in 2010? Or sorry, rather, did more people donate or fewer people?
Fewer people donate till age of 50
That's it.
in the 2010, but more people donate in 2010 at age of 51 till above 65.
Yeah. Right, so the younger people, far fewer of them donated anything in 1990. 26 to 35-year-olds, far fewer donated. 36 to 50-year-olds, far fewer donated. But the older groups donated more cash in 2010. That's the pattern.
Can you please repeat it?
Yep. So the first pattern that you're going to describe is this one, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then it dropped for the 2 older groups, whereas in 2010, it went up consistently for the first 4 categories,
Mm-hmm.
and then it dropped for the last category.
Mm-hmm.
But the other factor that you're going to talk about is this big difference here, and this,
Oh, okay.
and this. So these 3,
Oh,
the first 3 groups, far fewer people gave money in 2010 compared to 1990.
mm-hmm.
And again, in the body paragraphs, you're going to talk about this difference. So let's say it dropped from 17% of 18 to 25-year-olds to 6% of 18 to 25-year-olds. What is the percentage difference, though?
Triple, 1 to 3rd.
Mm-hmm. So you would say 1/3 as many people in this category donated to charity. One-third as many 18 to 25-year-olds donated to charity. Does that make sense? Because here's why this is important. Because if you just say 17 minus 6, you can say 11% fewer people donated to charity, right? But 11% would also be true if we had 90% donations in 1990 and 79% donations in 2010.
Yep.
All right, so that 11 percentage point difference, and it's not percent difference, it's percentage point difference, doesn't mean that much. Percentage point differences don't mean that much for analysis purposes. It's the percentage differences that mean something. Just to be crystal clear, if you say 18 to 25-year-olds, the rate of donating money fell by, let's say, 6 to 17, so it'll be 11. Is it 11% or 11 percentage points?
11%.
Percentage point.
11 percentage points. Don't say percent because it's wrong.
Why?
Sorry?
Why? Percent is wrong.
Let's say the price of something is $17 and it falls down to $6. They're having a big sale. And let's say this is your store. You're dropping the price on this widget from $17 to $6. What kind of sign are you going to hang out in front of your store? Widgets are on sale. What percent off are they?
Like
75%.
60.
Or about 2/3, right?
Mm.
oh, here percent.
2/3, 67%, same thing.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Or if the price goes up from $6 to $17, again, that's roughly 3 times. How much did the price increase?
Three times more.
300%.
This is about 200%, right?
Don't-
Remember, double is 100% increase. Triple is 200% increase. And I'm going to put roughly in here. So this is the percentage increase. Just like here, the percentage point increase is 11 percentage points. If you ever listen to the stock market report, you ever hear how they say the stock market fell by 100 basis points? Or they just say points. The stock market fell by 100 points today. Or the stock market rose by 300 points. Why do they say points?
There's a difference between percentages.
Because they're not talking about percentages.
Yeah.
So let's say the stock market is at 8,000 and it goes to 8,200, or let's make a nice round one. It goes to 8,800 in one day. They're going to say it rose by 800 points, not percent. Because it didn't rise by 800%. It rose by 10% in this case, right?
Yes.
Any questions about this, about the difference between percentage versus percentage point change?
So is it right to say it rose by $800? Because, no? Okay.
No, because when they talk about the level of the stock market, it's not dollars. That number, I don't know exactly what it refers to, but it's not dollars, it's not percent. It's just, it's a combination of many different things that determines that number. But they don't say, but they always say like 800 points.
Okay.
Just like here, if you say percentage points is just the raw percentage difference. Let's say 17% down to 6%, that's 11 percentage points. It's not percent.
So if I want to say percent, what should I change with the sentence?
You would have to give the percent. You would have to give the exact percent.
Okay.
You could say something like the rate. Okay, so you'd say 11 percentage points. You could say something like representing a change of, or representing a decrease of about 67%. If it went the other way, let's say it went from 16% like we have now to about 30%. let's say the economy was doing really well. More people are giving money to charity. Let's say 1990, 16% of young adults are donating money. Now it's 30% of young adults. So this is what? 14 percentage. I'm not even going to put the percentage sign. Percentage point increase, right? What is the percentage change here?
Double 100%.
Yeah, because it roughly doubled. So something doubles, that is a 100% increase. Let me just give the same salary example I gave before. Hopefully this clarifies why we use percentage increase for comparisons and not percentage point. So again, employee A makes $10 an hour. Employee B makes $20 an hour. The company makes a lot of money, and so the boss has decided to give everyone a raise of $5 an hour. So employee A now gets $15 an hour, and employee B now gets $25 an hour. Which employee is going to be happier?
A.
Yeah. So they both got $5 an hour more. So just saying employee A received a raise of $5 and employee B received a raise of $5, that's not a useful comparison, right? That's just not useful for any kind of comparison. What is the percentage difference for employee A? Why is employee A so happy?
50%.
Yes. If your salary increased by 50%, you'd be thrilled. Now, employee B is happy,
25%.
right, is not quite as happy. So the raise for employee A was twice as big, relatively speaking. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Can we change large to as much as employee B? Like employee A received a raise that is twice as much as employee B?
Yes, no problem. All right, let's do a little bit of writing, but I'm going to put you in groups because we're not going to be able to check everyone's work if everyone does their own introduction paragraph. I'm going to put you into some breakout rooms. We've got how many people here? 1, 2, 3, 4,
12.
11, 12 including me, so 11 people. I'll put you in 4 groups. The computer will randomly assign you. And what you're going to do in your group is to write the introductory paragraph. So the formula for writing the introductory paragraph, I'll put it here. Sentence 1, paraphrase the prompt. So sentence 1 is the context. what on earth are we talking about? And by the way, this pattern is the same pattern you will follow for the rest of your life for any kind of report like this. Any kind of situation like this, it's always going to follow the same pattern. It has to. Your first sentence, whether it's an essay, whether it's a letter, whether it's a report, what the heck are you talking about? That's the context. So all you need to do is paraphrase the prompt that they give you. The chart below provides information on the percentage of British people giving money to charity by age range in the years 1990 and 2010. For this part, you can also include, for example, always look at the y-axis and the x-axis to see if there's any additional information that you can include. People often ask, like, how do you get higher than band 7 on task achievement? Well, you have to, your descriptions have to be more thorough and better developed. So this is the basics, which they give you up here. But here you've also got 5 categories of individuals. I would include that information. Often they'll give you a source. There's no source in this case, so you're not going to include that. Right? So put that in. The next sentence is going to be your general overview. This is the most important sentence in writing task 1. It's in the rubric. You have to give a general overview, and it has to include the main stages or the main differences. It's very explicit in the rubric. You can't just give a basic general overview. You have to include the main patterns. So just include the ones that we talked about. Summarize the main patterns. Let me put it this way too. From reading your general overview, the reader should be able to predict exactly how your body paragraphs are structured. You're not writing a murder mystery. This is the exact opposite of fiction writing. You give away everything at the beginning because you're basically educating the reader. So you're trying to make things as easy to understand for the reader, and that means writing in a very predictable way. For the essay, when I read your thesis, I should know exactly how your body paragraphs are going to be structured, what you're going to talk about in them. From the general overview, same thing. I need to be able to predict what's going to be in your body paragraphs. Okay? All right, let me just assign you into groups. Okay, and I'll give you 10 minutes. What generally works is to try and paraphrase it chunk by chunk. Have you done this before, by the way?
To be honest with you, I don't have any clue.
Okay. Have we spoken before?
No.
Oh, okay. Do you want to tell me a little bit about yourself?
My name is Ahmed. Ahmed Tamer.
Mm-hmm.
I enroll with this group because I need to improve my English. I need to study like a new. I change my career. I need to study something to changing my career.
Ahmed, I just hired a plumber and he charged me $250 for 40 minutes of work. You make more than the doctors in this group. What are you doing? Okay,
No.
so I'm just joking. I'm still in shock at what I paid to snake my drains, but okay. What field do you want to go into?
Actually, I want to go to become a technician in like X-ray or radio therapy or stuff like this. Anything with the medical, but they need 6.5 IELTS. So that's why
you need 6.5 overall, right?
Yeah.
And what are the minimums that you need?
6.3. Hey, 6.5. I think this is the minimum.
So okay, so I'm not sure about your personal situation, but generally when they say 6.5 overall, they say with nothing below 6, for example,
Yeah.
or with
Nothing below
writing.
6.
Okay, what's your minimum for writing?
Writing 5.
That's really low.
Yeah.
I don't think it's going to be 5 in writing. That's ridiculously low. That's like if you're writing at band 5, I have no idea what you're talking about.
No, writing, I'm very weak in writing, but listening, speaking,
No. All I'm saying is 5 can't be the requirement.
No, me 5. I have 5.
Okay.
But the requirement, I think, is 6.
Got it.
Yeah.
So did you take IELTS before? Have you taken
No.
the exam?
No.
You just got your CLBs, right?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm not going to say too much until I see your writing.
Yeah.
If you need a 6, you need 6 on writing?
Yeah. The minimum 6, but overall it's going to be 6.5.
Okay.
So let's say it that way. Is it going to be like difficult, really difficult for me if I'm like in 4 or 5, level 5 or level 4?
I doubt you're that low. Because your fluency level in terms of speaking is pretty high. It's not writing for sure.
Yeah.
Is almost always at a lower level than everything else. Writing is the hardest.
Yeah.
But getting a 6 in writing is not hard because you can make a lot of mistakes and still get a 6.
Sounds good.
The most important thing right now is that you understand the structure of what's expected.
Yeah.
So we're going to write a model response now. That's the easiest way to very quickly boost your score. Because many people in this class are aiming for band 7 on writing, and to get band 7 on writing, you can only make a few grammar mistakes, realistically speaking. To get band 6 in writing, you can make a ton of mistakes. Okay. So no, it's not going to take you a long time. So Ahmed is going to give us a hand here. And for this context, for paraphrasing the prompt, my suggestion is always try and paraphrase what they give you piece by piece. It works surprisingly often. So Ahmed, when it says the chart below provides information on the percentage of British people giving money to charity by age range in the years 1990 and 2010. Let's put that in our own words and let's do it piece by piece. So forget about the word below. You're not going to worry about that because it's not going to be below when you do your writing.
Yeah.
What's a synonym for the chart?
Structure?
No, the chart.
The graph?
Table?
So in this case, it's not a table. A table is like a grid.
Oh, okay.
The graph?
Diagram?
You can call it a diagram, but this one is a graph. Yeah, the graph, the bar graph, if you want to be specific, the pie chart. If you get an illustration, or if you get like a process or a compare and contrast picture, then you can call it a diagram or an illustration. This one is not a diagram or an illustration, it's a graph. So the chart provides information on the percentage of British people giving money to charity. What's a synonym for provides information? Ahmed.
Yeah.
Ahmed.
Provide information, like supply.
What's a simpler word?
Give us.
Gives.
Gives.
So what's a synonym for information in this case?
Data.
Gives data. Very simple. Gives data on the percentage of British people. What's a synonym for percentage?
Proportion.
Okay, proportion works. Ahmed, do you know any other synonyms?
Yeah.
Percentage.
Yeah.
So they already have percentage. What's a synonym?
Yeah, percentage. I don't know.
The portion?
Yeah.
Share.
Sure. Okay.
Portion is more like for physical things. You know, if you're having a birthday party, one kid's going to scream, "He got a bigger portion of cake than I did," right?
Okay.
Proportion or share gives data on the share of British people. What's a synonym for British people?
English.
Colonial people.
Colonizers, of evil colonizers. Bar graph gives data on the share of people
people.
in Britain.
English people. Oh.
Sure. If it says French people, people in France. British people, people in Britain. Giving money to charity. What's
Donate.
yes, donating money. So obviously if you're donating money, you don't need to say charity because that's what a charity is. So what about the other information?
In the year 1990 and 2010. So have to write that.
Ages, different ages. In different age group.
In different age groups. By age range is the same as in different age groups. And in the years 1990 and 2010, simply
Like between, period between 1990, I don't know.
see, there's no between. It's only 2 years. Sometimes you get like a range where it'll be a whole bunch of years, but in this case, they're only giving you 2 years. So in 1990 and 2010.
It should be by different age groups.
Share of people. We're going to move this in different age groups. Here we go. The share of people in different age groups in Britain donating money in 1990 and 2010. How many different age groups?
5.
5.
So we're going to add that.
Five different age groups. Different 5.
Oh, sorry about that. On 5 different age groups. And some people will put 18 to 25, 26 to 35, and then you would put all of them. Don't write etc. Don't ever write etc. on anything in IELTS. 19. Okay. Who's got a? So this is solid.
Oh, Ian, I have a question.
Yep.
Ian, why not? It's by 5 different age groups. Why it's in 5 different age groups?
Because they're in 5 different age groups.
Wrong to say by there.
That's another way to do it. I'm going to put that one down too. I know what you want, I think.
Okay.
The bar graph gives data on the proportion of people in Britain. You could say by age group.
Yeah.
Proportion of people like that. Okay, let's do our general overview. Who wants to do this one? Let's have a volunteer.
Can
Is it Safa?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Safa.
Okay. Can we say general speaking?
Good. So what's that phrase that you've all memorized?
Generally speaking, it can be clearly seen that.
That's it. Excellent.
Can be clearly seen that.
And Ahmed, just memorize that phrase and always use it for the general overview.
Mhm.
This, generally speaking, signals that you're giving a general overview.
Okay.
And it can be clearly seen is in passive voice, and you need to show that you're capable of using a wide range of English grammar.
Okay.
So this is you showing that you know how to use passive voice. Okay, I didn't catch who was speaking, but I think it was Safa.
Yeah.
Okay, keep going.
Okay, generally speaking, it can be clearly seen that the young age group from 18 to 50 give charity or give money to charity more than 51 to 65 plus age group in 1990.
So can I? So
Okay.
can I?
Go ahead. Who's got a different one?
So generally speaking, it can be clearly seen that overall proportion of charity in both groups, in all groups, are increased in. Overall increase in proportion of the charity in both years were increased. I wrote it another way. So it's generally speaking, it can be clearly seen that overall proportion of the charity in both here are increased in all of the groups.
But that's
there's
not true. Because
It's not true.
it didn't increase. It decreased in 3 out of 5 groups. The proportion don't.
There is a constant increase, isn't it? Like it is increasing no matter
Well, no, it went up and down in terms of age, and it went up and down in terms of year.
So
Be
can't
careful.
we write?
So we can say that it can be increased up to age 50 years, and then there's a slight decrease.
You could do something like that. I want to hear what Ella wants to say.
This is what I wrote. Like, generally speaking, it can be clearly seen that in 1990, from 18 to 50 years old donated more money to charities than elderly groups, while in 2010, elderly aged 50 and above donated more money. This is what I wrote, like general overview.
You're going to be in big trouble if you do that, because we have no idea how much money they donated.
No, like by percentage.
We have no idea how much money anyone donated. We just the only thing we know is that the percentage of people in each group changed. We have no idea how much they donated. It's even conceivable that in 2010 this age group donated more money in total than in 1990. If these people all gave more money than these people did in let's say on average these people gave $5 in 1990, but in 2010 this smaller number of people each gave $20 on average, so the total amount could be higher. We have no idea.
Generally speaking, it can be clearly seen that the first 3 category of people in 1990, they give money more than 2010.
And what about the
rest?
Not that they gave more money. Like,
it's not money. Sorry, it's about the people.
The number of people.
Yeah, number of people. Yeah.
And then you're on the right track. And then what about the other ones?
What we've seen, it's dropping after. It's complicated. I don't know. I don't want to lose it.
Okay.
It's not that complicated. Okay, go ahead, Allah.
Generally speaking, it can be clearly seen that in 1990 from 18 to 50 years from 18 to 50 years old individuals more generally speaking, it can be seen that in 1990 more number of people aged 18 to 50 donated to charities in 1990.
So it's like more people donated money in year 2010 than year 1990.
So can't we write simple
don't
that
know
it
that.
can be clearly seen that young people donated less money than seniors?
No money.
I'm going to help you guys out a little bit. It can be clearly seen that 18 to 50-year-olds, what happened with that group?
They are donating more.
Let me see, that the percentages...
The percentages of the donors are increasing.
Look, I'm going to lump everyone together in these three groups. What happened with 18 to 50-year-olds between 1990 and 2000?
Participants are higher in 1990 than 2010.
Okay. Done. The percentages of 18 to 50-year-olds who donated to charity decreased over the given period, right?
Decreased?
Yeah. 18 to 25-year-olds decreased. 26 to 35 decreased. 36 to 50 decreased.
But you have not mentioned the years.
I'm going to say over the given period. We're still missing something, but I'm just going to put over the given period. Or I could say between 1990 and 2010. Doesn't matter. Okay, what else is true?
While the percentage of 50 years and above.
So we're going to say 51 and above.
Increased.
Who donated to charity increase.
There you go.
Does
that make
come after decrease?
You can put it there. You don't need it. Any questions about this general overview?
We can say while the share of those 51 and above. While the shares.
Yes, because it's two groups.
Yeah.
Is that simpler than you expected?
Way simpler.
Very simple.
And way complicated.
Well, that's...
So, but in 1965...
Simplicity is complicated, yes. Sorry, go ahead, I interrupted you.
Yeah. If we take the elderly group 65 plus, if we compare it with the 51 to 85, so the the number of the people are decreasing. The donation is decreasing. If we compare both, only these both, 51 to 85 to 65.
Yeah,
How can we can say an overall?
So overall,
it's increasing. It's not increasing.
No, these two have increased. The first three went down. These ones went down. these two went up. So 3 groups went down over the given period, 2 groups went up during the given period. That's the basic pattern.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, simplicity can be hard to do, but that's why you got to do a lot of these to prepare. I guarantee you, you do 2, 3, 4 of these, it's not going to make a lot of difference. You need to see a whole bunch of these, and you need to practice writing a whole bunch of these before these kinds of concepts and this kind of language get stuck in your head. We're not born talking about this, right? This is like technical writing, academic writing. This is a very important skill to develop, and it's not so easy. The average person in the population cannot do this. Native speaker, ESL, doesn't matter. The average person doesn't know how to do this, because this is something specific that you learn for school. This is the kind of language that I had to use when I was taking statistics for social sciences in university 20 years ago, over 20 years ago. Right, and I had to, so I learned it in that course, but everyone in school had to take those courses. It was mandatory because regardless of the major that you take in university, every paper that you submit, you have to back up your ideas with data. You'll get such a garbage mark if you don't do so that you might as well drop out of school. You have to support everything you say with data, or it basically doesn't count. Right? Any kind of business meeting that you go to, you make projections, you talk about comparisons, everything has to be supported by data. All right, so based on this organization, your first body paragraph is going to be about 1990.
Okay.
So body paragraph 1, I'm going to post a model for you. Okay, because we're running out of time. We've got 10 minutes. I'm going to post a model here. Okay, good. In 1990, the percentage of donors increased with age up to age 50 before decreasing. Okay, that's a very good topic sentence. It's general, and it tells you what's happening here. In 1990, percentage of donors increased with age up to age 50 before decreasing. And so the rest of the paragraph is going to be evidence for those changes. 17% of 18 to 25-year-olds donated to charity, the lowest value in that year, followed by 31% of 26 to 35-year-olds, which was nearly double the rate of donations by 18 to 25-year-olds. So that's a meaningful comparison. I'm saying 26 to 35-year-olds, twice as many donated compared to 18 to 25-year-olds. And notice again, I'm not talking about the money, just the rate of donating money. 42% of 36 to 50-year-olds gave money to charity, which was the highest percentage in the chart, about 2.5 times more than was given by 18 to 25-year-olds. Again, I've just chosen to use 18 to 25-year-olds as the basis of my comparison. The percentages of donors in the older age groups were lower. 35% of people aged 51 to 65 and 32% of those aged 65 and older gave to charity. And here are some synonyms, okay? Contributed to charity, made donations to charity, made charitable donations, made charitable contributions. So those are all synonyms for donated to charity or gave to charity. And these, by the way, this example that I'm giving you is a little bit excessive. It's more than you need. It's a bit too long. It's around 300 words. So you're not going to do this, but you're going to get a good idea of how to do this. In 2010, in contrast, the percentage of people making charitable donations increased up to age 65 before falling. So that's this business. Up, 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 and then down for the last group. However, the percentages of donors were significantly lower among the three youngest groups. That's making a meaningful comparison. The percentages of donors were lower in these three younger age groups.
Jan, just a question, only one question. So in body paragraph number 1, we giving evidence?
You have to.
In body paragraph 2, giving the comparison?
No, comparisons are in both, evidence is in both.
Okay.
I'm just, it's like we talked about at the beginning. My first paragraph is 1990, second one is 2010, and then as appropriate, I'm going to make comparisons throughout.
Okay.
So among those aged 18 to 25, only 6% donated, which was a drop of 11 percentage points, right? Because it makes sense when you're talking about the later year to refer back to the earlier year. It wouldn't make sense to do this for the earlier year. A drop of 11 percentage points representing a decrease of about 2/3. Among those aged 26 to 35 and 36 to 50, there was a drop of 7 percentage points from 1990 to 24 and 35% respectively. See, it's 7% for both, but I'm going to say, in other words, the number of donors fell off by nearly a quarter among 26 to 35-year-olds and by about a sixth among 36 to 50-year-olds. You can say fell off or you can say fell, it doesn't matter. However, the percentage of donors in the two oldest categories jumped by about 10%. I'm using a colon here because I'm providing the explanation. The number of people donating to charity in the 51 to 65 age group grew from 35% in 1990 to 39% in 2010. And among those 65 and older, from 32% in 1990 to 35% in 2010. So both those increases are about 10%. And that's it. And you do not give a conclusion. You're done. Okay. Describe the difference. Explain what that difference means. Compare it to something. All right, we're basically out of time. We've got a few minutes left. So if anyone has any questions, now is the time to ask.
I just had the question, the evidence and comparison in both paragraphs. So yeah, I got it now.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Give it some time.
Yeah.
Right, read this over several times. What I'd like you all to do is to write this out by hand. This is a time-tested technique used by tons and tons of professional writers throughout history. Professional writers, when they're learning a new style of writing, they take models of effective writing and they just copy them out by hand. It's not the same as retyping. It's something about the thumb and forefinger connection. It creates some kind of strong neural connection with your brain that it doesn't happen in the same way when you're typing on a keyboard. So it's important to do this pen and paper, pencil and paper. Some people write it out multiple times until they've really not even so much memorized it, but internalized it until you get a strong feeling for it. This is how I used to learn to write. I'd sit in coffee shops and I had this crazy idea that I was going to be a writer, a story writer when I was much younger. And I would write out, not the whole book, but I would write out paragraphs by my literary heroes. Lots of them. And it was over a long period of time. And then what happened is these different styles of writing would start to blend together in my head. And my style of writing became a combination of my literary heroes' styles of writing. And I know that those people use the exact same technique. They would take a book, they would, in many cases, rewrite the whole book, and then they would take a book by another one of their literary heroes and rewrite that whole book by hand. Or some of them used a typewriter. If it's your second language, I suggest using the slower method. And then, without looking at this, write your version in the forum.
So we have to read it several times and then we try to write. Okay.
No, copy it. Don't
Okay.
just read it, but actually copy it out by hand several times. At least once. This is like a consistent practice that you should be doing, that you can do.
Okay.
There's lots of Band 9 samples throughout the course. For Writing Task 1, Writing Task 2, these were written by, some of them are written by me, most of them are written by current writing examiners. If they were to take IELTS, that's what they would write. Those are the best models you can find anywhere. Take them, write them out by hand.
Okay.
That's one of the best ways that you can study. Then, obviously, don't look at it when you're writing your work, when you're writing your version. Post your work online in the forum, and I'll check it. And rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat.
Okay.
Check it by band 9 in our course, or which one is useful for IELTS? Just I missed this part.
Okay, so if some of you are having trouble figuring out where stuff is in the course, I'm going to show you right now. So I said I was going to show you where to find the exercises about participial phrases. So I can show you where that stuff is right now. I've already posted the assignment in the news forum, so you're going to have a link to this document if you don't have it already. Okay, you can download it and do with it as you wish. Let me just... Okay, so if you need to go, it's 9 o'clock. Have a great evening. I'm going to stick around for a few minutes and just show people around the course who need to see where things are.
Thank you very much. Good night.
Take care, Oksana.
Thank you.